Let me ask you this, Virgil. Do you think it is, well, I mean, in the White House, do you think they care about losing the House at all?
I mean, depends what you mean by in the White House. I mean,
in the people who are closest to Donald Trump, do you think that they actually care if the House is lost?
I mean, it depends. It depends who you're talking about. If it's someone like John Kelly, I mean, he's clocked off,
Right.
He's clocked out. And probably anyone whose job is president babysitter probably thinks deep down inside, okay, if the Democrats win back one of the chambers of Congress, that's probably going to make this whole thing a lot easier. This whole
a lot
fucking
easier,
farce.
right?
But if it's a psychopath like Stephen Miller who is dedicated to actually changing policy and making the lives of millions of human beings far, far worse, then yes, he would have to realize that we want Republicans, even squishy Republicans, to remain in control of Congress as well. Anyone who thinks they might be subpoenaed or investigated is going to have to think, I want Republicans to keep the Judiciary Committee and not, who's it, Maxine Waters?
But why would even that be the case? Because recent evidence, I mean, assuming that they would just lose the House, and actually, I meant to bring this up with you too. I saw there's an interesting breakdown by this woman. She's a professor at, I'm trying to think what the university is, but arguing that the Democrats may actually even take the Senate.
Yeah.
Based upon the, she's the one who predicted the Virginia sweep, and way out because of the way that partisan breakdown and polarization, off-year election, all that type of stuff. And voting anti-partisan, but why? What lesson in modern American history would suggest that even if Donald Trump is impeached, there's going to be any type of problem for him in 2020, or that's going to be problematic for him in 2020?
Well, it's not just impeachment. It's being subpoenaed sucks. It's terrible. If you keep a diary, that can be subpoenaed by members of the opposition party who will leak it to the press. It means all of your dirty secrets are out in the open. Even if you don't face criminal charges, even if you don't face impeachment, though these are real possibilities, the people around Trump don't want to go through this process because they're seeing what happens. They're seeing guys like Cohen go bankrupt.
What about Sean Hannity, who is, I think, arguably the second most powerful person in the country right now? Do you think Sean Hannity is sitting there saying to Donald Trump, like, it seems to me it's quite possible that he's saying, like, you can lose the House. In fact, all the talk about the Democrats obstructing, then it'll be true. And Bill Clinton was impeached, and his approval ratings went up 20% or something.
I mean, it's plausible. I mean, impeachment and Democrats taking the House, those are, two different...
I don't think, though, he'll be impeached until 2022.
I would have to agree with that. I don't think it would be the case.
They're definitely not impeaching him if they take back control.
But, I mean, in terms of Hannity, I don't think he's someone with any, firm beliefs. I think he's purely like a creature who lacks critical thought. It's more like just input than output.
Yes.
Just his neurons are all parallel, to put it that way. And I would think he would probably ostensibly support Republicans maintaining control of Congress. Maybe this is spun as like a validation of everything he said about the left and how they're overreaching and so on.
Right.
And he would think, this would make them question themselves and then turn to the right like they did after 2002. But also he might think, well, our ratings tend to be pretty good when there are some Democrats in power somewhere. And maybe this, the gas is running out of the tank if Democrats keep fucking embarrassing themselves year after year after year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I get the distinct sense that Donald Trump does not care about the 2018 election.
No, I don't. I mean, I think that clip, shows you there. I think he would be, I think people are telling him to care about it. Especially members of Congress are telling him to care about it. I think that he might view this in some narcissistic way as a referendum on him. I mean, he's certainly going to go out and tweet about it and maybe do some rallies with a handful of candidates. But ultimately, I think he would shrug it off and not really care about it.
Right, and he has the ability
Republicans
within moments to simply say, "Not my fault. They screwed up."
He joked a couple of months ago. We played the clip of him. He basically
this is not the most important election.
It's not like I'm running.
And keep in mind, he's utterly dispassionate about governing. He's utterly dispassionate about policy changes. I mean, all of that has come from the Congress so far.
Right.
So I don't think he views this as, it'll be harder to pass my agenda. He doesn't have an agenda.
Right, he doesn't have an agenda, so he doesn't care
If
about
the Democrat,
it's not there.
Slightly more interesting. I mean, do you think that? I mean, I don't see how he would do it because there's no way he's going to move an inch on xenophobia and immigration at all. But like, if the Democrats win, then he starts thinking like, I got to triangulate.
Yeah.
I got to do what Bill Clinton did.
It's funny.
And there's room for him rhetorically to do that because he could wrap right back around to fake economic populism.
I mean, I think he would, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I think they would because, I mean, there are some things that have to happen. You know, a budget, for the most part, has to happen. Certain things have to be funded. There needs to be a dreamer fix, for one. And obviously the president's intransigence has, gummed up the works in a lot of this. But I think he would... especially if it was if it were a split Congress, I think he would definitely try to pursue some kind of economic populist policy.
For a while I thought that was the case,
even just rhetorically.
Well, I mean, I wonder because somebody's gonna I don't think they have. I mean, maybe his people wouldn't care, but I can't help but think that Mark Levin and Laura Ingraham and the rest of the crew at one point would have to leave, would be looking for an exit strategy.
But
right?
You always point out it's a cult, and his base, just as they don't care about losing their jobs and still supporting him, they're certainly not all of a sudden going to be like, oh yeah, but that high-pitched voice guy doesn't like him anymore, so now I'm bailed. Like, he's more important to Laura Ingraham and Mark Levin. He matters more, and I think if
I just don't know that that's a winning strategy for them. I think
going into 2020, I think actually it would be a nightmare if he still was appeasing a rabid and racist base and also doing some authentic pretend economic populism. That was what made him scary to begin with.
Yeah, but he could pretend, but he can't do anything.
But he could sign. I think he would sign what's put in front of him.
Yeah, but the point is, that's the point, is that there would not be anything for him to sign.
Right.
The Democrats have the House.
Right.
The Republicans have the Senate.
Right.
There wouldn't be anything for him to
true.
sign. He could talk about it, but that's all that would happen. There would be nothing would happen.
Best of all worlds.
I mean, the Senate's a bit more flexible than the House, and I mean, the House is really where the intransigence, where the gridlock comes from.
If they passed like a slight minimum wage increase and he came out and he said, I want to sign it immediately, it's just as an example. I know he said wages should be lower, but if he actually did that, I think, yes, you would immediately get several Republicans who flip on it.
And as well, I mean, it's quite possible that Democrats will control both chambers of Congress, and in that event, if they were able to pass legislation despite the
Senate will really be a problem that way.
Yeah, right. If that were the case, I mean, I can't see him vetoing anything or understanding what that means.
Right. Yes, I agree with that.
Totally.
If the Senate is controlled by the Democrats, then I think it's going to be. Talk about depressing. I mean, it's obviously look, right now it's the worst case scenario because of the judges that are going through. But to watch the Democrats and Chuck Schumer, I assume you heard about this Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
And one person on Twitter, when I had tweeted something about Chuck Schumer, sort of showing how not to do politics. One person, vaguely contrarian, was just like, "Oh, you know how to do politics?" And I'm like, "No, I'm saying that he doesn't." Do you have an example? Is there literally one thing that you can cite that you think Chuck Schumer has done well in this scenario? And they're like, "Well, I don't know. I don't follow that stuff that much. You may be right." I mean, that was it. Chuck Schumer is becoming an incredible liability. He's going to be much more of a liability if they take back the Senate.
Right now, imagine the legislation that would pass a Democrat-controlled Senate in 2019. Chuck Schumer's a majority leader. You have a 1-2 vote majority that's going to include people like Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp, Doug Jones, Kristen Sinema now,
Right,
who is essentially a fucking
right.
center-right person after starting out as a Green Party anarchist squatter.
Yes.
And
Center right may be actually, I mean,
she's right wing.
She's
She's a right wing person.
And you add to that the fact that, with Chuck Schumer as the leadership, that's before even considering that there's no way they're going to do away with the filibuster, as they should not right now while they have a Republican president.
right.
Then that means, you'll need 8-9 Republican votes to sign on any legislation. It would be gargantuan in how just insufficient, how disgusting this legislation
So you
would be.
mean more Wall Street deregulation?
Yes,
would be
that's
ends
what
up
it would
happening?
be. And
Yeah.
then the Democrats would own it.
Right.
Right.
There is,
Right.
I mean, I would not wish for any legislation to come out of 2 years with Trump. The only thing I'm talking about is like, will you deny if by some stroke of luck there's still a vacancy, or if, God forbid, one of the the Breyer, Ginsburg in particular, end up leaving the court, do you prevent Trump from getting that
Well,
seat?
then that was what
That's
makes
what
it,
I'm
that's
talking
what makes
about.
it really
I'm talking
matter.
about, like, do you basically say, oh, and incidentally, we don't have time for any more federal judicial nominees on any court, period.
I mean, you should, obviously, but it's going to be up to two people. It's going to be up to Chuck Schumer and Pat Leahy. I mean, maybe Leahy would stay strong and say we're not going to give him hearing of the judicial committee.
Leahy is better politics, but he's totally institutional. He's one of these. He's an institution process worshiper.
Yeah, but I
the
mean,
only thing is, I think at this
surely
point, the blue slips. Thing,
Yeah, surely
Yeah.
they
Right.
see the blue slips
Yeah.
and how they've gotten fucked and think, all right, we're gonna throw it right back at you. Though Schumer's a squish, and he's the one who said,
see, like-
we're gonna go back to civility if we win.
If we go back, we'll be civil. Do you think in the specific case of Joe Manchin that the Democratic caucus would be better off without him coming back specifically?
As opposed to a Republican there?
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
think control of the Senate brings you
Controls.
resources
Right,
and
right.
some ability
Right.
to do something.
Right.
I think the point is that at that point you need a smart Senate leader to be able to communicate in some fashion to the American public, like, hey, maintain your expectations. We're here to basically prevent Donald Trump from doing any more damage.
Right.
And that's what we're going to do. And you need to frame it that way. And you need to be able to articulate it and hold your caucus at least to be able to do that.
Well,
and
that's
I don't
not
think he can do
Schumer.
shit.
No, Schumer can't do anything.
It's not that Schumer can't do anything. It's that he does bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's worse than nothing.
Right.
Let's go to...